Welcome everyone to PolyTalk, Bahrain Polytechnic's official podcast where we will be discussing multiple topics, stories, insights. We will have guests, we'll hear stuff from them, their perspectives, their perceptions on things, and we want to hear from you as well. My name is Mohammed Awad, and I'm here co hosted by
مهند
Mohamed,
Gassab.
and we have a special guest to kickstart this amazing podcast. Would you like to introduce him?
So today's guest is someone you really want to hear from. He's not just the CEO of Bahrain Polytechnic, he's also a sport lover and a guy with a pretty epic journey. Please welcome Professor Ciarán Ó Catháin. Hello, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
It's my pleasure.
How was your day so far?
My day today was quite busy, quite unusual, but it's good.
Typical life of a CEO.
Yes, you never know what happens from one day to the next. But it's always good and challenging.
All right, nice. And speaking of CEO, I'm pretty sure it's been a long journey to reach to a certain position. So let's go back to the beginning. We want to know a little bit about yourself and how did you start? Like the childhood. What were certain experiences that shaped up the person you are as of today, and the way you lead?
Okay, well, I mean, I grew up in Dublin, in Ireland. Came from a very working class background, although my father then developed a business in the garage business, and we all had to play our part and support him and work in the business. But my mother probably was the financial person behind the business, and I probably followed from her in terms of the financials and looking at the financials. And very early on, when I was about 12, I was doing stock takes on a Saturday and could indicate and tell when my brother had taken parts for mixtures that he was doing, or how many packets of cigarettes he may have taken out of the shop, and I could identify all of that even at that stage. I probably just grew into that and developed and supported the family business to make it grow. I used to go out and collect all of the money that was due in on a Friday or on a monthly basis, and have quite terse conversations with a number of companies who were very slow to pay their credit account for the week. But if they didn't pay it, I wouldn't allow them to get diesel or petrol on their way home on the Friday evening. So it was always a great hangover. So it was a great schooling in that sense, but also too because we grew up in a community where we played as kids all together out on the green. We had races all around the corner. We played football, and probably the racing and the athletics really probably sort of had a great influence on me in terms of growing up. But if I was to say who was one of the people who really influenced me as a child, I'd probably say my parents, both my father and my mother. My father was very calm and reassuring, and my mother's probably I'd probably take after my mother in a sense that I can be quite fiery, but very business orientated.
So, have you ever dreamed of becoming a CEO? I mean, what was the plot twist in your life that you went to the educational and leadership career?
Yeah, I suppose when I went to college, I mean, my first year in college, I was elected president of the Student Union, and I did that for 2 years. So I think from early on, sort of my ambition in terms of leadership was always there. I was also very involved for a while with one of the political parties in Ireland, and I helped support them. I helped organise a lot of the events and things for them. And having left college, before that, I would have had my own business running as an outdoor catering, providing food for parties and for functions all around the greater Dublin area. When I left college, then I sort of switched tack and said I wanted to go in and do something in education. And I went back and did a postgraduate diploma in education in Trinity College, and taught then for 5 years in a secondary school. But during that time, I opened a restaurant. I had a number of other things that I used to do in terms of outdoor catering. And of course, being a school teacher in Ireland, there were always 3 great reasons to do it. It was June, July and August, because you were off for those 3 months. And those 3 months were always great in terms of doing something in terms of other types of business. And after about 5 years, then I left, and not necessarily I left education, but I left Ireland and I went to live in France, in Strasbourg, to work for an American university as their director for the campus in Strasbourg. They had a number of restaurants on the campus, as well as a hotel school and business school, which I was hugely involved in. And they also had a hotel in the Black Forest in Germany, and also one in Engelberg in Switzerland. So all of that was part of my remit, and in terms of going up and down very regularly to do that, and to see what was happening in it. So that all sort of, I suppose, formed who I am to.
Today, exactly.
And I sort of took different paths then thereafter. So after I finished in Strasbourg, then I was appointed as the director of the Northern Ireland Hotel and Catering College in Northern Ireland. And I was probably the youngest probably ever appointed into one of those positions. But again, it was a monotechnic institution that just concentrated on hospitality and tourism. Had a lot of difficulties in terms of numbers were falling, the programs need to be changed. So over the first 2 or 3 years, we revamped the whole institution. We thought about a campaign at a stage where they wanted to merge us in with a bigger institution, and we fought that with the minister and with the tourist industry supporting to keep us as a monotechnic. I suppose I stayed up there for about 8 years, 9 years as the CEO or principal and CEO of the Northern Ireland Hotel and Catering College. But it was a great place to live and to learn, and very similar to Bahrain as well, in the sense that, you know, the family and the ethos. But what was interesting in the north of Ireland, again, I left, we had nearly 45% of the students were coming from the Republic of Ireland up there. And in my last graduation, I had the President of Ireland as our guest to do it. And again, that was something that was unique and was different. But Mary McAleese, who was the President of Ireland at the time, had been a former Pro Vice Chancellor in Queen's University in Belfast. I had known her for many years, and I had said to her, would you like to come and be my last hurrah, in a sense, but it would be a nice way to bring the Irish President up to what would have been perceived as a very predominantly unionist part of Northern Ireland. And she came in and we had a great day. And thereafter then I moved to Athlone as the president of Athlone Institute of Technology, where I stayed for 22 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, truly.
Sounds like a roller coaster of a journey that you've had to get to this point. But what would be the main highlights, or let's say challenges, that you faced, let's say when you moved to Bahrain, like differences in culture, the system of education back in Ireland versus in Bahrain? What are the things that were similar, and what are the things that were different, and how did you overcome these challenges, let's say?
Okay, well, to me, challenges are always opportunities. I never see something as a challenge. I see it as an opportunity and see how you can find a way around it. But in terms of the culture, I mean, I had done some work back in 2010 in KSA when they were looking at the colleges of excellence, and I was aware of some of the culture and some of the culture dynamics there. I also had probably around 300 to 400 students a year from Saudi Arabia studying in Athlone. So I had a good indication of the sort of the culture and the mix. I think my grounding in Northern Ireland, between the Catholic and the Protestants, I think really gave me a sense of the two different dimensions here that operate here in Bahrain. I think that training for nearly 10 years helped significantly in terms of understanding sort of the parallels that I could draw from Northern Ireland. But I do think here, you know, the challenges, what are the challenges? I mean, the challenges mainly are people saying, no, you can't do that. But then you test them and say, well, why can't you do that? And they cannot give you either a legislative reason for not doing it. They can't give you a valid reason in terms of where we want to take the institute. So we were able to go around a lot of things, but we got a lot of support too when I came, you know, from His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, indeed from government in terms of to what they wanted to do. And the big challenge for the education sector here, and the big challenge for the Polytechnic, is the national objective is to have 50% of the high school students going into applied higher education and 50% going into the traditional universities. So when I came in 22, there was about 9% of the students from high schools coming into the Polytechnic. 3 years on, we're at 31%. So we've really, in terms of inverting that triangle, we're very close to where we need to be at this point in time if by the end 2030 we want to have near 50-50 coming out. I reckon it'll get to about 44-45%. I don't think it'll get to 50-50. But because of what we're doing and the progress that we have made in the 3 years, we've got huge support, huge buy-in from industry as well. We've expanded our programs. We've gone from, you know, purely just level 8 programs to level 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 now in terms of the applied PhDs that we're just about to start this September. So that has been, you know, it's been very dynamic in terms of change, but we've also gone from 3,000 students to close to 12,000 students this year. And in September coming in, we'll probably be close to 14,500 students. And that in itself was a big challenge in terms of ramping up all of our systems to be able to cope with those numbers. We also merged BTI into the Polytechnic, which gave us the real value for that was the real estate that we got. And we took in about 180 academic staff there that we've had to put through extensive retraining to bring them up to the levels that we want. So all of those, while there were challenges, there were also opportunities. But it is now, in terms of meeting our national target of 50-50, we're now at around 31%. I think this September we'll probably hit 33-34%.
One thing that I would like to touch upon is when you talked about the expansion and how the plan is to move 50% of the high school graduates into applied universities like Bahrain Polytechnic. Do you think, like, as of when I graduated or when I first joined in 2015, I remember there was approximately only 200 students being accepted, and that was the max. And now I hear the numbers of like 1,000, 2,000 students being accepted.
Last year we took in 2,500. This year we'll probably take in probably 3-2, because we will have another facility in Delmonte. So that will have about 500 there, but about 2-7 on the.
And I was actually a part of the strategy session that you held, I think around in 2021, 2022, where you talked about expanding and taking BTI and a facility in Muharraq and I think in Tubli as well.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know, like,
is Polytechnic actually for all?
Well, I believe Polytechnic is for all. I mean, if you look at the age profile now, we're going from 60 and up to early 60s. I mean, we have one family where we have the father, the mother, two sons and a daughter actually studying in the Polytechnic. If you look at your own family, I think there's about 20 of you between cousins, first and second.
That's actually true.
That are in the Polytechnic. And I think by opening it up, rather than just doing the level 8 program, helps significantly. I mean, the last one that we've done last April is the launch of the apprenticeship program. And again, that's, earn and learn thing. The students are 70% in industry, and then they come into us for 30%. So we have nearly 400 students now on that program, and we have another 140 started just this week. So they were doing some induction this week, and then they go to on-the-job training, and then they come back in and out. Again, that's something, that Polytechnic as an applied higher education institution needs to be doing. It's part of our raison d'etre. We also need to be doing more in the community. We need to be looking at some, guest lectures for people to come in and talk about the current topics that are around the world, and we need to be playing our part in doing that. But we also need to be looking at too of how we can help in terms of getting women back into education, women back into the workforce. We also need to be looking at the unemployed people here, whether they're graduates or whether they're school leavers, of how we as a Polytechnic can help them to get them into employment. And that's when I talk about the concept of Polytech for all. That's the encompassing philosophy behind what we're trying to achieve. That just because we're a Polytechnic, you shouldn't come in the door. And for me, my own, if I go back to my own story, I mean, I know you had said to me at one stage, are you a bookworm? Well, I'm not a bookworm, but I enjoy reading. But when I was in school, I was probably one of the greatest messers in the classroom. I was always in trouble, apart from the debating society, when I would have always had many debates in school. But like when I left school, I went to be an apprentice. And then I decided I had a sufficient in my leaving cert, which is the equivalent of a high school diploma, to go into university. And then I went into university and did my degree. And I haven't stopped sort of learning since then. And I think that's the other part of what a Polytech should be doing, is that upskilling, the reskilling, the lifelong learning that everybody now needs. Because what you start off in and where you end up in 40 years, and now even today, we don't know what jobs are going to be there in 5 or 10 or 15 years with the impact of AI, the impact of where AI is going to permeate so many of the jobs that are currently there today. Where will we be in 15 years? Where will you be in 15 years in terms of if the Polytechnic is there, able to provide upskilling and reskilling for you, or reskilling for your family, or for the companies that you work in? And I think that's really a critical part of where we need to play our part in that whole economic progress and development that Bahrain will need into 2050. We're not talking about 2030 now, we're going into 2050. But we don't have the crystal ball to know exactly what's going to happen. But there are a lot of indicators that we're reading in the literature around the jobs that are really no longer going to be existent, and the new jobs that are coming in. And we as a Polytech have to really be able to do that. And so, for example, tomorrow we have our Curriculum Advisory Board. We have all of about 80, 90 companies coming to us in the Radisson Blue, and we have a dialogue with them around all of our programs to make sure what we're teaching is current. and make sure, you know, so that the graduates coming out have that skill set that industry need. And if we don't do that, then, you know, we will be living and doing a huge disservice to students in terms of where and what we should be delivering and what skill set they will need at the end of their 4 years. But I think one of the key skills we really need to embed is that people at the end of 4 years, they think, then I've got my degree, I don't need to do anything else. You need to go and do other things. I mean, I've done so many different things in terms of, I did a couple of masters, I've done a postgrad in accounting and finance, I did a diploma in education, and then I went on and did a PhD, which, you know, when I went back to talk in my school, and they introduced me as a professor, and I know the head teacher who was there, who was one of the teachers when I was as a pupil, he said, I never believed this was you, that you had actually gone and you had done all of this thing. Because in school, like, I would not have been the academia type, I was more into making money. Out, you know, doing things in business and all of that and making money, rather than looking to say how I would get on and what I need in school. But today it's more important, I think, that kids need to have an education. They need to have that development piece that will allow them to excel and to look at the skill sets that they have and the inclination that they have, so that we can help to make them an all-rounded person, but one that we can keep upskilling and reskilling to the future.
But don't you think that the part that you had the skill, which is you were interested in making money, and I believe that interest at a very young age brings up a lot of experiences, because then that which unlocks critical thinking, actually, because you go and you try to find ways to make money, you know, flipping products or, you know, shoes or games or whatever, but it builds that business mindset. But do you not think that the focus shouldn't completely be on education and needs some life skills, like such as making money at an early age, like you had? What do you think about?
I mean, I think if you look at the graduate attributes that we have for the Polytechnic, those life skills are completely embedded into what we do. I mean, the applied learning, but also that problem-based learning gives students an opportunity to really learn what's happening. Their final year projects, for example, are all industry projects. The industry come in and give the projects, and the students then work on those projects, and they're real live industry issues. And I think that's really a critical piece where the Polytechnic plays its role. We're not living in an ivory tower where, you know, that you have this traditional universities who have very set curriculum and they go through the curriculum very sort of set in a way, and they're not really necessarily interacting. With the problem-based learning that we have, students are dealing with real live issues on a daily basis in the classroom. We're developing the confidence of them to be able to talk, to analyse, to critically evaluate what's going on. And if that's about making money too, well, then we make money. But I think the other part of it, in terms of from a Polytechnic perspective, if I look back, say, 3 years ago when I came, our lifelong learning department was bringing in 5,000 BD a year. Last year we brought in 4 million.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
that 4 million, you know, people say, oh, that's a business you're running. Yes, it is a business, but that 4 million will be reinvested back into Polytechnic. We now have a master plan that's to develop Campus A and Campus B, of which phase one we hope to start late to the end of next year, hopefully. But it's going to cost about 60 to 70 million to do the plan over a 5 to 10 year period, of which we have said to government we will contribute 50% of that cost. Now, we wouldn't be able to do that unless we're generating the revenue, and the revenue that we're generating stays with Polytechnic. It's our money to use as we see fit. So, for example, we want to invest about 4.5 million in sports facilities, because to me, any educational environment has to have really good sports facilities, not just for the students that are on the campus, but for the community that we serve. And if you go around Isa Town and the surrounds, there's around 350,000 people living there. We become then the hub for them. But not alone do we become the hub for them, we break the barrier down for those kids who are coming from lower socioeconomic groups to be coming in the gates of the Polytechnic to play football, to go for a swim, to go for running, or for whatever they want to do. But their fear of coming inside an education institution then drops, because they see it as going into school or going into high school, and they don't see that artificial barrier that has been created. And that's part and parcel of the policy, but it's also too bringing their parents in and seeing what we can do for the parents, not just on the sports field, but once you get them in and you start talking to them, then we can do wonders with them and support them and help them in terms of their development.
Wow.
That's very interesting. And speaking of sports, do you think that there would be any plans in giving scholarships to certain upcoming potential athletes?
I mean, I think we always will look at scholarships for athletes and coming in, but I think the fee level that's within the Polytechnic is very low. So, if you're looking at giving them a scholarship, you're talking about giving them, physiotherapy supports, you're talking about giving them proper coaching, nutrition advice, all of that type of thing, which is more important for athletes than it is in terms of just the fee for their fees. And that type of support we will certainly be doing. And I think once we develop the facilities, I think then a lot of that we will be trying to create various academies that will bring people in from a younger age right through to sort of that high performance criteria that needs to be there for those who have ambition to maybe go to the Olympics or to play for some of the up and coming football teams, or to play squash or paddle or whatever it is, that we will have that facility there to be able to bring them to that level so that they can really get involved at the level that they feel comfortable with. And I think I've done this before. I've done it in Ireland. So I know exactly what needs to be done and how to do it, but I know the impact it has on society. And, I'm also of the view, a healthy body and a healthy mind. And something that I would, use as a philosophy. And I think in terms of as an educator, it's something that we need to be doing, but we need to have those facilities there to allow our students to be able to do that.
Talking about healthy minds, how do you set your goals? I mean, do you have sticky notes, vision board, meditate? What do you do? What's your process to set a goal, and how do you reach that goal?
Well, I think, I don't use sticky notes. I don't use a vision board per se, but I do have a vision in my mind of where I want to be and where I want to go. And I do have to-do lists that I would say, okay, this I need to get done today, or this needs to be done. But I also keep very close contact with the people who report into me, whether it's the marketing directors, whether it's the deans, and I have regular meetings with them in terms of having discussion and a dialogue with them around what they're doing. And did you ever think of doing this, or maybe changing this, or looking at maybe how we might be able to flip something around. And that's the piece, that comes to me quite naturally in a sense, in terms of I don't necessarily, and I don't think in boxes. I think outside of the box in a lot of times, and I try to find solutions, and I'm solution orientated. But I think you can get caught up too much in terms of, this is the goal we have to do, this is the KPIs. We have lots of KPIs for our strategic plan that we have. We're reviewing it now. And again, that's because in the first 2 years of the strategic plan, we have probably met 70% of the KPIs that we set ourselves. And now we probably need to have much more stretch targets that will, drive us further in terms of where we want to go. But we also need then to do some more developmental work with terms of managers. And with the next cohort of managers that we need to be bringing on in terms of succession planning within the Polytech. So we have a lot of work to do that way. But I also think, if we're educating the leaders of tomorrow, we need to be the leaders of today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's very interesting. If we take a look back at the past 10 to 15 minutes, we've been talking about a lot of expansions, introduction of different educational levels, bringing in new real estate to accommodate the upscaling and introducing a lot of 50% of high school graduates aim to be in the high applied universities. How do you think, or how do you currently and future-wise are going to manage the big change of traffic, let's say? Because back in my days, Polytechnic was a small community, which was relatively easier to manage, because in total we might have been 1,000 students, but now you're telling me you have 2.5K a year. So what's your solution to the challenges that might arise of taking in such a big number on a yearly basis?
Okay, I mean, I think you get your increase out of for the first 4 or 5 years, and at the end, when you get to the first cycle of 5 years, you have the same number exiting as you have coming in. So for the first 5 years, we will have that continuous growth, and thereafter, sort of, it will balance out in terms of where we are going. But in terms of the staff that we've looked at, as I said, we brought in 180 staff through BTI. Last year, we employed 70 academics from around the world. This year, we're employing 78 academics from around the world. So it's bringing in people that have a skill set that we need for the future. But I think, one of the things that we need to not to lose in terms of from a Polytech perspective is that community feel. And I believe that that we have as a community. We talk with the students, we work with the students, we talk with the staff, and we work with the staff. And that has always been an ethos of mine, as I, in my last university too, that I had that ethos And as somebody said when I left that loan, what will be missed in that loan when Ciarán goes? And one of the students said, because Ciarán walks across the campus every day, he knows nearly every student by name, he'll know their family, and he'll always stand and talk with us, and he treats us as equals. And I think that is an ethos that we need to have here in the Polytechnic, so that students are treated as equals. We get to know them. We know those students who may need support, that we may be able to say, okay, that guy needs a little bit of support, that girl needs a bit of support, and we put that in place. And that community ethos is critically important. And it's irrelevant whether you have 1,000 students or 15 or 20,000 students. That ethos needs to permeate everything that we do. And I think, you know, the academic staff that we have and the allied staff in Polytechnic are very good at that. They're very good at working with students and reaching out to students. Yeah. And you could lose that very easily, but we have tried to manage to make sure we keep that. The other big challenge for us was around maintaining the academic quality of our programs. Now, we've just been through a BQA review, and we came out of that really well in terms of being a unique institution with a unique vision, and the growth that we've seen. You know, it's the growth that we've had in the last 2 years for a higher education institution is most unusual. And to be very honest about it, normally growth might be 10% per year, and like we went, you know, 100, 200% over that period. So there are challenges there in terms of how we do it, and it has created tension. But I like tension that's creative, and you create creative tension, then you'll get creative solutions out of it. The second part of it is, and one of the big challenges for us over the next 2 years, will be around our employability rate for our students. Currently, I think in the last year it was either 83%, and the last year just gone we're around 78% plus I think the other 2% who were setting up their own business, so in around 80%. That is one of the highest employability rates here in any of the higher education institutions in Bahrain. We will have that challenge of how we are looking and how we can maintain that growth. And now we're putting in a new strategy in that, in terms of looking at internationalization, looking at companies all around the region that really might take on some of our students. Like we'll have a career fair now in May, and we have about 80 companies from around the region coming in looking for our graduates. So all of that we need to manage really well in terms of, again, their core competencies, their ability to go in and to talk, their ability to be, you know what's happening in the industries where they're going into, so that, you know, again, we keep that standard that we have set for the Polytechnic of why year after year industries come back and say, we want your students. And I had a conversation last week with one of the big employers here in cybersecurity, and they took on 20 graduates last year, of which 18 were from Polytechnic. And this year they're looking for 40. And he said he'd be happy to take 40 students coming out of Polytechnic because they have what they want. And I think this is the piece that we need to make sure, irrespective of the size, that we keep delivering at that level. And I think we're well capable of doing that. But, you know, we've had to change, and some people don't like change. And others, you know, will grasp that change and will do things. Because they agree and they see the vision that I have created for what we want to do as a Polytechnic. And for those who don't feel very comfortable in terms of where we're going, you know, for them, that's their decision. Do they want to stay in Polytechnic? Well, if they do, then they get on with where we're going, or they brush up their CV and go elsewhere. And that's their choice.
That's really nice. One of the points that I really liked hearing, which is the interactions with the students, and because I come from a marketing background, that for me clicked with like personalized marketing. You know, it's like the same concept, but you're tapping into the psychological need of the students. You make them feel like they are important, and that goes a very long way. Regardless of people denying that they don't really care or care about those things, it does have a positive impact. So I see that implementing that ethos is amazing, and gives you a very huge competitive edge compared to regular university, where you just come, study, do your exams, and you leave. And I feel like that's such a value add to Bahrain Polytechnic. Always seen it as a great place, and I think it will continue to grow and become even better.
And even now, like, we're operating from 8 o'clock till 10 every night, including Fridays and Saturdays now. I mean, Fridays and Saturdays, we have about 1,400 coming in for top-up degrees, of which about 80% of them are coming in from Saudi Arabia. So, we are developing that whole piece as sort of that add-on to sort of, again, it's that upskilling, reskilling, bringing people from a level 6 to a level 8, which their companies want. But again, we need to make sure that they have those other parts of it. I mean, college life is around, exploring. And that's why I think for me, investing in our sports facilities again and bringing community in will really embed that in the place. But we've also put in a new garden. Alba funded a new garden for us at the square where students can sit in a very nice environment, have a coffee and sit and chat. But we do need to be doing more in terms of the facilities. But I would say over the last 3 years, I've seen a huge number and a big growth in those students getting involved in sports. We had a team last year in the Ironman, a female team which won the Ironman. We call it an Ironman, but it was the Iron Women or Ironman. But they won that, and we gave them a lot of support in terms of how we could do it. We had the marathon then up in Sahir where we had the relays. And there's lots of different sports activities that we're looking to put on. And I think, that again is bringing it in to create a community, but to create a buzz for students to say we can go out and we can support this at the weekend. And more people, our students, are staying more on the campus. We will do more and more to try and attract people so that they will stay. So as soon as their class is finished at whatever, they're not into the car and gone. Now, some will always into the car and go. But the mainstay will stay. Like Mohammed, is one of quite a number of students who sometimes we need to ask him to leave because he's there. But I mean, but that's a great endorsement in terms of the Polytechnic. The students want to be still there. They want to be around. They're mixing with their friends and their cohorts. But they're also playing a part in terms of that whole culture piece that's so important to higher education. It's a culture piece that's so important to us as management in terms of getting involved in activities. And Mohammed is an example of that in terms of getting involved with a lot of the material that Mark are doing. And we've a number of Mohammeds who do lots of different things for us, and we've the volunteers that do lots of different things for us in different events and different days. And they wouldn't do that unless they thought it was going to, it's adding to what they want, but it's because they're enjoying being on the Polytech, they're enjoying giving something back. And that's a critical piece for us.
For me, I think joining a university or being in a university doesn't just mean like you go to the class and just leave. I mean, you should have the full-on experience of joining clubs, joining the activities. So basically, we host like an activity or an event for every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. The students literally can enjoy the event before the assessments week or after the assessment. There's like, I think we have around 12 clubs, student clubs.
I'd say it's more. I'd say it's near 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we had 5 at my time.
Yeah.
You have the music, you have the media, you have whatever you are interested in.
Lots of them. And I think the other thing too now is we also have the alumni as well. And we have an alumni club as well that's been run by our alumni, bringing people in and organising events for them. And I think all of that connects. And some of the alumni coming and speaking to students, whether it's in a seminar or coming to talk to them about their career and what they've done since they left Polytech, all of that adds to a dimension of what we need to be doing, and creating an environment where learning is fun, but also living and being on the campus is fun and exciting, and people want to be there.
Yeah. I would say that right before we end, there's just one point that I would want to ask. And it's about something that you actually said about the cybersecurity students, and you have a higher acceptance rate right now. So it's more towards the trend of which school do you see like are having higher employability compared to another school? And another point would be the rise of entrepreneurs. Have you seen that, like when you look at your stats as a university, Bahrain Polytechnic, what's the percentage rough figure that you've seen people move from employment to self-employment?
We're sitting on the fire.
There's a number of questions in terms of the trends in terms of the programs. I mean, the cybersecurity program, like we started that, and there's been a huge take up, and people want to do everything as cybersecurity. Is now everything we're moving into will be AI and AI related. But in terms of the employability, I mean, it's fairly balanced right across the institution between the business and logistics faculty and engineering. Now, because of the growth we've had, we've just split engineering into 2 schools. So we've engineering, which is mechanical and electrical, and then we have a new school of ICT and creative media. And again, it's sort of to break that down so that it can be managed in a much more coherent way, but also then we will look to that interdisciplinary approach, which is so important and for everybody today, that they have an understanding of AI, but they've also have an understanding of how AI will impact on their roles and on their functions and their jobs. So all that is really, really important in a sense of how we integrate that. Although we're saying, yes, we have 4 schools, but we need to make sure that our curriculum stays current, because that is the key piece. That's why we have such high employability rates of our graduates, is because the industry know, when they look at the projects that they're doing for industry, that they're at the cutting edge. And we need to be able to stay that and maintain it. We need to stay ahead of the curve if we're really going to serve Bahrain the way we've been asked to serve Bahrain, in terms of whether it's 2030 or towards 2050. And that really, challenges us as academics who think, well, we've done this, and then we move on. I mean, we're having a seminar now in June, which will be around, can robotics come in and take over from teaching? Can teaching now, be done? Well, we know it can be done online. We saw that in dynamic during the pandemic, of how, overnight every university around the world went to online teaching. Was it better for students or worse for students? My view is when we reopened in Ireland, the students were glad to be back. They want to be on the campus because they missed all of that other part of campus life. There are some students who really might like to sit in their bedroom and be online all day and do it because that's who they are. But for the vast majority who want to be on a campus, they want to be involved in the societies, they want to have that interaction with other people, which you miss in that environment. But for us as educators, we need to make sure if our curriculum isn't hitting what industry wants, then we really are in trouble. And I think that's why, with our closeness to industry, with our every program has industry advisory boards. They're advising us constantly around the dynamic and the changes that are there, and we're watching what's happening in the World Economic Forum in terms of the jobs for the future, the jobs that are not going to be there. I mean, even if you look at an accountancy now, when the kids did accountancy, even now, or 10, 15 years ago, they did their T accounts, they did their trial balance, profit and loss, and balance sheet. Now all of that's fed into a spreadsheet, and you press the button and you get the whole thing out. Now it's the next stage of how you interpret all of those analysis, how we look at them from a sustainability piece, how we look at them from an environmental impact in terms of taking a project and doing a evaluation on how good it is, but where is it going to impact on, not alone on the economy, it's now on sustainability, it's now on the environmental impact. So we need to make sure that our curriculum covers all of those things, and then keep that challenge going for the students. And if we don't do that, we will be failing the economy, Bahrain, but most importantly, we'll be failing our students.
Deep.
Yeah,
That's very
I'm
deep.
almost tearing up.
Yeah. But do you have anything else to say?
Yeah. One of the questions is, what would you give an advice to the younger version of you, which is the same age of our students now at Bahrain Polytechnic?
What advice I would give them?
Yeah.
My advice would be, go with your dream, go with the vision that you have, and don't be afraid to take it and do it. And the other piece I would say, take out the emotion out of the decisions. Park your emotions and look at the facts. And if you do that, you'll be very successful.
It's hard.
Sometimes, emotion overkills and overtakes decision making.
I agree. 100%.
You've heard me speak this before. I mean, students, you need to, not just students, but managers too, need to be able to park the emotion and deal with the issue. Do the analysis and then take it on. And it doesn't matter whether it's somebody who you like or somebody who you dislike. Yeah. Once you take the emotion out of it, then you can deal with the problem. And I think for young students today, they need to do that. They need to understand as well that if they want to reach the pinnacle of their careers, finishing a degree in the Polytechnic is only a stepping stone. They will continue need to learn. They'll need to, whether it's micro-credentials, whether it's doing a master's, whether it's doing a PhD, or whether it's just upskilling or reskilling in their discipline, they will need to do that if they want to thrive. But it's not being afraid to have a vision and go for that vision. And don't let people to say no. And if you fall the first time, get up and do it a second time. Fail once, fail better the second time, even fail better the third time, but then you will succeed. And I think that's a key thing, I think, for students today. And I think young students today, the millennials, I think they're very easily just put off sort of the challenge and the hard work that it takes to do things. Nothing is given on a silver plate anymore. You have to earn it. You've got to earn the respect. But if you have a good concept and you have a good growl about doing something, I think you can do it. But you need to drive that yourself.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You need to consistently learn. Thank you, Professor Ciarán, for joining us and for the insights that you've shared. It's been wonderful having you. And thank you, Mohammed, for co-hosting.
Welcome.
Thank you to all the team. And see you guys in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.